responded to Flaherty's speech with his own comments on the study and the need for him and his fellow judges to resist influence from powerful outside forces. Do not allow machines or individuals to adversely influence our judicial system, especially a few of those who would like to place themselves above the law, who employ tools of lies and deceit merely to accomplish their ends, O'Kicky said. Insist upon justice for your fellow man. He added a cryptic warning. Remember that tomorrow you may be next. When the ceremony concluded, the crowd shuffled from their seats as God Bless America was blared through woodwind and brass from the overhead balcony by members of the Conemaugh Valley School District High School Band. O'Kicky, after nearly 2 decades in wait, would preside over the county courthouse. The directives he received from the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania that day were commissioned at his request. O'Kicky had asked the High Court's administrators to examine Cambria County. What they found was a need to clean up severe backlogs. They questioned whether defendants were being tried within 180 days of being charged, in accordance with state law. They also wondered why civil cases from victims' families of the 1977 Johnstown flood were still unresolved 11 years later. We will give this report very careful attention and follow its recommendations and discuss these points with fellow judges, O'Kicky said, and we will bring about the solutions that the Supreme Court seeks. In addition to calling for the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts study, O'Kicky was considering other shakeups. He had employees inquiring about anomalies in the county's Domestic Relations Office, which was led by the judge who had been seated to his right during the ceremonies. Friends and associates would later say he was planning to impanel a county-wide investigating grand jury to root out suspected corruption in the courthouse. Simmering beneath the pomp and circumstance of the celebration, unbeknownst to the general public, was a silent battle of forces. The new president judge had learned just days earlier that he was the target of a Pennsylvania State Police probe into his official and personal affairs. Within a year, he'd be indicted by the 6th statewide investigating grand jury, accused of frequenting brothels, assisting organized crime, and demanding kickbacks in exchange for favorable rulings. Within 5 years, O'Kicky would find himself an international fugitive desperately attempting to barter with the U.S. Attorney General for leniency in exchange for information about links between the mob and big business in Johnstown. Part 1. My name is Judge. Chapter 1. Youthful Ambition. Cambria County President Judge Norman A. Krummenacher III occupies a position that's perceived differently than it was just a few decades ago. Gone is the blue shag carpeting on the walls designed, supposedly, to insulate a judge's office from bugs and inquisitive ears. The tales of shots fired at courthouse windows have faded to legend, or, depending on who you ask, myth. And a hovering cloud of suspicion, innuendo, and scandal has largely dissipated with the passing of the decades. All of these facets were products in part of Judge Joseph F. O'Kicky, a predecessor and former friend to Krummenacher. I knew Joe O'Kicky from the time I was born, Krummenacher said during a 2019 interview in his office. The reason being was, and I can't give you the year, this was so long ago, my father was the city solicitor in the early 60s and gave Joe O'Kicky and another attorney jobs, like per diem type work, for the city of Johnstown when they were researching properties for the Redevelopment Authority. O'Kicky later returned the favor by bringing Krummenacher in as a young law clerk. One of the most brilliant men I've ever met in my life, Krummenacher said, but he was at the edge. And I do believe over time, and I'm no MD, that he had a nervous breakdown that was never diagnosed. Long before O'Kicky's life went under real or imagined assault by outlaw bikers and later the Pigs, Arabs, and Italians, He lived a life like many other young immigrants.